In this tutorial, we'll use some of the best plugins from Red Giant to create unique 3D titles and 3D animated objects in After Effects. In the previous tutorial, linked down below, I've showed you how you can bring animated 3D objects to After Effects using Red Giant Mirror. Now this time I want to take it further and integrate it with a few other Red Giant tools such as Tao, Reflection and Supercomp. As usual, a full disclaimer first. This video is not sponsored by Maxon, the company that owns Red Giant. I happen to use these tools in my regular workflow and I believe these plugins can uplift your After Effects experience. But before you buy, make sure to try. There are links in the description below for everything I'll be using here, including this secret cave clip courtesy of Adobe Stock. Because I wanted to move inside the cave, I already reversed the motion of this footage and then pre-comped it and tracked the 3D camera motion. I also created this Dragon's Den title using the Mr. Darcy bold font that you can sync from Adobe Fonts and converted it to 3D so it will respond to the camera motion. There are also 3 lights here, an ambient and 2 point lights that I'll switch on in a later stage, but now we are ready to bring our scary dragon model into this comp. So I'll open the source files folder and drag the dragon in parentheses Cinewear.c4d as well as its material to the timeline and switch off the visibility for both layers. Now this is a free model from Sketchfab, the link is below, and I brought it to Cinema 4D and baked the PLA point level animation keyframes and then save it as a Cinewear file. Now this is a critical step to make sure this model will work with the Mirror plugin. So if you missed the explanation of how to do it, make sure to watch the previous tutorial by clicking on the link in the description. Anyway, now we are finally ready to create our mirror layer, so I'll press Command Y, Control Y on the PC side to create a new solid layer. Make sure it's set to the comp size as well as name it mirror, and then I'll go to the RG Trapcode category and apply Mirror 3 to the layer. Over here, under the geometry, I'll change the base geometry from this default plane to 3D model. And this will allow me, under 3D model settings, to choose the 3D model that I saved from Cinema. So this is the layer, the dragon layer. I'll select it. And as we can see, we have our animated dragon, which is already working with the 3D camera animation. Now, to make it look a little bit more nicer, of course, we need to attach the texture. So I'll twirl down the texture section in the plugin. And for the texture layer, I'll choose the material, which is the diffuse pass from Cinema 4D. We're going to return to the material options and modify them in a moment. But now I think I want to make this model a bit larger. So I'll double the size by setting it to 1000. And then let's just animate it. And there are a couple of ways to work. You can animate directly from the geometry section here in the timeline, or you can create a null and animate the null directly inside the comp. Because I don't want to do some sophisticated animation, I'll stick with the position and rotation options over here. So I'll start by changing the Y position. I want to raise this guy a little bit up in the scene. So maybe something like this, maybe even higher, so it will go outside of the frame. Let's just type in -960. Obviously I have some experience with this file, so I know what will work. And then I'll press Tab to go to the Z option and type in 700 and create a keyframe at the beginning. Then I'll move to the middle of my timeline and I'll lower the Y value to 75 and set the Z to -1300, which is going to bring the dragon closer to us. And you can see how fast this is working thanks to the integration with Cinema 4D and Trapcode Mirror. I'll move towards the end here. And I want the dragon to fly past us. So I'll change the Y position to 30 and the Z to negative 3400. So I'll go to the beginning and I'll scrub the timeline to see how this works. I really want to get closer to the dragon's face here. So maybe I'll change the rotate X. This is going to bring him down. Let's start with a value of 10 and see how this works. Really nice. And then I'll scrub all the way to the end. We are seeing a bit of the tail, which I think actually looks very interesting. So I'll preview the animation so far by pressing spacebar. And I think it looks great. The integration between Cinema and Mirror is really working nicely here. However, we can make it look even better. So I'll pause, let's say over here, where we are seeing a bit more of this dragon. Be like so. I want to see the wings. And then I'll turn on the lights here, and you will see that Mirror is going to respond to those lights, which is great. However, it makes it look a little bit too shiny to my taste. So we can open up the material option, and we have plenty of stuff that we can change here. First, I just want to call your attention to the fact that you have presets that you can choose from, and it's worth to just check few of them and see if they are working for you. For example, we have these really nice wireframe presets. However, in my case, I'll just undo and I'll change a few of the settings here. First, I'll take the ambient to maybe just 10, so it will be a bit darker. And then I think I also want to take away the specular and the specular shininess. And then to marry it a bit better to the environment, I'll open up the reflections and lighting section over here. And instead of the built-in desert horizon, I'll go to custom, and then I can define a custom environment map. Now, one way to work is to select, of course, your video layer, which in my case is layer number 7. And then we can play with the reflectivity. So if I'll raise it up, you can see how this works. So now the color of the water from the cave is reflecting over here. I think it is just too much. So I'll lower it to maybe 10 and then tab to the reflection sharpness, set it to 50 and set the reflection roll-off to 50 as well. So it will be a bit more smooth. But then again, the reflection source that I'm using is very sharp. So my suggestion is to select the layer that you are using as a reflection source, duplicate it. I'll press Command D, Control D on the Windows side. And then I'll take away the 3D camera tracker effect. I'm also going to hide it. This is just going to be our reflection source. So let's just name it reflection source. And to this layer, I'll add the fast box blur effect and set the blur radius to 10. Now back in the mirror effect, I'll make sure that I'm using this as my reflection source. And this means that everything is going to be a bit more smooth and not as sharp. So now I can play with the reflectivity and see, maybe I want to raise it, I don't know, a touch more. So depending on the footage that you are using, and again, it's a little bit of a cheat. It's not a real 360-degree HDRI image, but it should sell the illusion. All right, so I'll close up the material. I'll go to the beginning and I'll preview again to see how this looks with the modified material settings. It looks a little bit flickery, so I'll pause the playback, I'll open up the rendering section, and I'll raise the super sampling to 16 times. And from my experience, this is going to improve the render and make everything more smooth. We're going to test it in a moment because I want to now add some 3D titles. Now I'm going to use DAO, which is another plugin from the Trapcode suite, which create 3D terrains using geometric shapes. But we are going to apply it to masks and extrude a very unique 3D title. To make it work with the DAO plugin, I first need to select the text layer here, and then right-click on it, and from the Create options, choose Create Masks from Text. And this is going to switch off the visibility of the text and create a layer which has masks that describe the text shape. It's a bit difficult to see, so I'll turn this layer momentarily to a 3D layer just to show you this is what we have. Now, I don't need to work with a 3D layer because all the 3D-ness is going to be taken care of by the DAO plugin. I just wanted you to see what happened. So I'll undo twice, and then to this layer, I'll go to Effect and apply from the red giant trapcode category the DAO effect. I'll open the path generator and switch off generate path because this is not the one that I want to create path from, as well as not light, so I'll turn them off as well. Instead, we want to use path from masks. And because we already have some masks applied to the layer, we can see that this is working. However, we need to change the position so it will look correct. So I'll click and drag on the X position, just move the title where I think it needs to be. So somewhere along those lines in terms of X, the Y looks okay to me. I'll click and hold on the Z, and then I'll drag it so the title is going to be more or less where the text used to be, so somewhere above the rock. So 1650 in my case. Next, I'll open up the segment options, and I'll raise these segments from the default 25 to something much bigger. So let's go with around, 400, something along those lines. And then, to make it a bit more legible, I'll change the overall size to, let's start with 40, and then click and drag on the size X to reduce it to something smaller. So maybe something like this. And I think this looks very nice and unique. And as you can see, it renders also very, very quickly. But we can make it even nicer by changing the material. So I'll close the sections that I finished working with, and then I'll go to the texture, and for the color texture, I'll use the same Secret Cave reflection source comp that I chose before. Now, I need to make sure that I'm actually taking under account the effects and masks. And come to think about it, I'm not sure that I did the same thing for the mirror layer. So let's just pop inside the mirror layer, and under texture, yes, I think that I forgot to tell it to use effects and masks. And this is really important because, just to remind you, we have this fastbox blur that we've applied to the background. So our actual texture is looking like this, and this is going to really work nicely with what we are trying to reflect over here. However, we are not seeing the desired part. And of course, I'm back now with the DAO layer. So we can change the texture offset. I'll start by clicking on this Y-axis, click and move to the right until I'll see something that looks like the cerulean water underneath. And if I'll move my cursor, you can see that it's actually a moving reflection. Really, really looks nice. As before, I'll open up the rendering section here and change the super sample to 16 times, which is going to make everything more smooth and less flickery. Okay, now what we are missing here is some reflection that should be on the water. And to do this, I'm going to cheat, of course, by adding my favorite reflection effect from Red Giant VFX suite. So I'll select the layer, go to Effect, and under RG VFX, I'll add the reflection effect. I'll grab the axis start and end and move them so it will be more or less under the title, something along those lines. And then the slant and height, I'll use this one to look more or less the way I think it should be. And then I'll change the opacity to 40 tab to the softness and add 25 pixels. And what will help to sell this even better is the displacement. So I'll close all the other sections that I don't need to worry about. And for the displacement, you already know, I'm going to use our secret cave reflection source. Now, depending on how this looks, let's first try it by making sure we are including the effects and masks. And I'll change the horizontal displacement to 8 maybe, and the vertical displacement to something bigger, like 30. And then I'll switch it to the unblurred version, so the sharp version. And I think this one is actually working better because we are already creating some blurriness using the reflection style. So we don't need the softness version of the displacement source in this case. But what we will need to do is animate the reflection plane. So I'll create keyframes where I am for the axis start and end, slant and height. And then I'll select the layer, press U so I can see the keyframes and go 1 second before, and then just animate all of those things so they are going to look as believable as possible. I'll move backward and do the same thing and to the beginning and attach this to the desired location. And then of course I'll need to move forward in time and do those fine adjustments. Let's go to 8 seconds. And here we can barely see the reflection. But if we are here, let's just make sure it is working until the end. All right, so now that we have everything sorted out, we can select the entire effect, so the reflection effect, copy it to the clipboard, making sure we are at the first frame, go to our mirror layer, and then I'm just going to paste it over here. And this means that we'll have the same reflection, but now for the dragon. Excellent. Let's take a look at it from the beginning. And it looks quite promising, but it can look even better. And to help us melt all the elements more tightly together, we are going to use the Supercomp plugin. So back inside After Effects, I'll go to the beginning, and then I'll select the layers that I want to comp together. So these will be the mirror layer. I'll hold down Command, Control on the Windows side, select the Dragon's Den Outlines, which is the title, and then of course I'll also select the background layer. Then I'll go to Effect, and from the RGVFX category, I'll apply Supercomp. Now by default, it will come up with this floating window, and you can leave it above the comp, but I think it is easier if I'll just dock it near the project panel or my effect controls and give it a bit more room so we can see what we are doing. Okay, so we have our 3 layers. I'll start with the mirror layer, which is also the dragon layer. I'm going to move my timeline so I can see, let's say, I think this is going to be a good frame to start the matching process. So I'll pause over here, and then I'll click on this little plus. And from this effect carousel, I'll apply the color correction effect. I'll make myself a bit more room so we can see what happens, and click on match background. And this is going to use this frame to match the layer with the background, which in my case is the secret cave, of course. I also need to create some light wrapping. So I'll return to this plus, and from the effect wheel, I'll choose the light wrap effect. And I'm just going to leave it with its default settings. Let's just go to the beginning and see how this works. Hopefully you can see that now it is light wrapping the light that comes from the background. And now I'll select the background, and to it I'll apply the diffusion effect, which is just going to create some softness and make everything look even more integrated together. Now the title looks a little bit dimmed here, so I'll click on the plus option. First, let's apply the light wrap effect to the title, but I also want to apply some glow. So I'll select optical glow and maybe change the amount here to 10 and the size probably to something very low like 3. And we can take a look at it This is, of course, switching off the entire layer, but what I intended to do is switch off the Supercomp layer just to show you the contribution of everything and how it looks. And of course, it deals with the reflection. It knows how the layers are arranged in the timeline. And if you're going to add additional layers, it will compensate for them as well. So I think this looks really impressive. And the last thing that I'm going to do, and this is totally optional, I'm going to add some grain as well as motion blur. So unfortunately, motion blur is not supported by neither Mir or Tao, as far as I know. So we'll need to add some synthetic motion blur. And to do it, I'll return to the timeline, go to the layer menu and create an adjustment layer. I'll make sure that I can see the effect controls because now I want to use 2 extra third-party tools. For the motion blur, I'll use the Revision Real Smart Motion Blur effect, which is again a third-party tool. The link is down below, and usually I'm not even touching the default settings. If you don't have access to the Real Smart Motion Blur, you can go under the time category and try one of these, the CC Force Motion Blur effect or the Pixel Motion Blur effect, which comes bundled with After Effects. However, this I think is going to look really nice and it is rendering very fast. To melt everything even tighter together, I'll go once again to the Effect menu and from the Red Giant Magic Bullet category, I'll add the Renoiser effect, which is going to add some grain to the entire thing. And you can choose one of the built-in presets. I'm just going to leave it with Modern Master, but I will raise the grain amount to 50. And this is it. I'll go to the beginning, I'll maximize the composition panel viewer, and I'll preview everything to see how it looks. And I think that the Supercomp effect, together with the motion blur and grain, really helps to melt everything better together. The light wrap, optical glow, and background diffusion make it look more believable and give all the layers a more cohesive look. And this is it for this time. Hopefully this was useful information and will help you with your work. If you like the video, you know what to do. Press on the like button. Maybe also subscribe to the channel and tick the bell icon to get notified when I upload new content. Anyhow, thank you so much for sticking until the end and for being such a creative guy or gal. I'll see you again in the next one. Take care and goodbye.